Well, thank you very much, and God bless the great state of Indiana. I'm thrilled to be with you all. Thank you for the incredible welcome. Thank you for your leadership. I am so privileged to be with so many tremendous patriots. I'm privileged to be here with your incredible governor, Mike Pence. I'm privileged to be here with the strong conservative governor from Kentucky, Matt Bevin. And I'm privileged to be here with my colleague in the Senate, a man who has served for many decades his nation with dignity and distinction, Senator Dan Coats. And I am especially privileged to be here with each and every one of you. Patriots who love our country. You know, I'm reminded of a story of a man who's driving along a country road. And he sees a little boy by the side of the road with a box of kittens. And the sign says, "Free kittens. They're Democrats." And he thinks, that's the strangest thing I've ever seen. But he just keeps on driving. He doesn't think much about it. A few days later, he's driving by that same country road, sees the same little boy, same box of kittens. This time the sign says, "Free kittens. They're Republicans." At this point, this makes no sense at all. Fella pulls off the side of the road. He walks up to the boy. He says, "Son, I don't understand it. A few days ago, I drove by you. These kittens you said were Democrats. Now you say they're Republicans. What gives?" Kid looks at him and goes, "Well, mister, now their eyes are open." And, you know, I'm happy to tell you, there are a whole lot of people whose eyes are opening across this country. Our country's in crisis right now. We're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Our constitutional rights are under assault each and every day. America has receded from leadership in the world. And yet, all across the state of Indiana, all across this country, people are waking up. And help is on the way. This next election, I believe, will focus on three key issues: jobs, freedom, and security. Let's start with jobs. You know, it's easy to talk about making America great again. You can even print that on a baseball cap. But the real question is, do you understand the principles and values that made America great in the first place? You know, if you look at JFK and Ronald Reagan, both of them understood that reducing taxes, lifting regulations, freeing the private sector produces incredible economic growth. You want to unleash jobs, you lift the boot of the federal government off of the back of small businesses. Of course, I'm not telling anyone here anything you don't know, because the state of Indiana has been an incredible example of doing just that. Governor Mike Pence led the effort to cut over $600 million in taxes. To lift the burdens of government on the people of Indiana. And what are the results? The results are, in Indiana, we've seen 103,000 private sector jobs created. You've seen innovation in Indiana, including passing the largest school choice program in the United States of America with 32,686 participating students. Every one of those students have been touched by a program that gives them hope, that gives them an opportunity to get an education. I think school choice is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. And every child deserves access to a quality education regardless of race, ethnicity, wealth, or zip code. And you know, the leadership that y'all have seen in Indiana under Governor Mike Pence has been incredibly powerful. But imagine how much better it would be if you weren't doing it with an 800-pound weight from Washington, D.C. on the backs of your shoulders every day. You know, Washington is not some abstract and distant threat. It's killing jobs each and every day. You know, I have to admit, before addressing you guys, I sat back and reflected on one of my favorite movies, Hoosiers. And I did a little Googling on quotes from Hoosiers, and you know, one of the best quotes is, "Look, mister, there are two kinds of dumb. Guy that gets naked, runs out in the snow, and barks at the moon, and the guy who does the same thing in my living room. First one don't matter. The second one, you're kind of forced to deal with." Well, I'm sorry to tell you, the federal government has become the guy who's getting naked and barking in your room, in your living room. And you know, you don't have to look any further than the war on coal. President Obama, before he was elected, promised to bankrupt every coal-fired plant in America. And amazingly enough, that is one of the few campaign promises he's come very close to meeting. Now, state of Indiana understands the impact of coal. 84% of Indiana's power comes from coal. Federal government's so-called clean power plant, the most expensive regulation ever proposed in the history of mankind, would increase electricity prices in Indiana by 16% a year and 21% a year in peak periods. And it would kill at least 20,000 manufacturing jobs here in the state of Indiana. It doesn't make any sense to have the federal government destroying the livelihoods of the men and women of this state. It doesn't make any sense to have the federal government hammering small businesses. If I'm elected president, we will repeal every word of Obamacare. We'll pass a simple flat tax, and we will abolish the IRS. We'll rein in those regulators who have descended like locusts on farmers and ranchers and small businesses, killing jobs all across this country. You know, I'm reminded of a few years back, I was out in West Texas. And I asked folks there, I said, what's the difference between regulators and locusts? I said, well, the thing is, you can't use pesticide on the regulators. This old West Texas farmer, he leaned back, said, "Want to bet?" And we will stop amnesty and secure the borders and end sanctuary cities and end welfare benefits for those here illegally. And let me tell you the effect of all of this. We're going to see millions and millions of new high-paying jobs. We're going to see jobs coming back to America. We're going to see manufacturing jobs coming back from China, coming back from Mexico, coming back to the state of Indiana. We're going to see wages for working men and women finally rising again. And we're going to see young people coming out of school. Imagine the feeling when you get a call from your son or daughter who says, "Mom, I just got a job." Or even better, I got 2 or 3 or 4 job offers. I don't know which one to take. That's been the history of America for most of our history. And it can be again if we get back to the principles that work. The second critical issue in this election is freedom. And you know, the passing of Justice Scalia underscored the stakes of this election. It's not just one branch, it's 2 branches of government that hang in the balance. If you care about religious liberty, if you care about the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, if you care about the fundamental Bill of Rights, every one of our rights is one liberal justice away from being stripped away from us. And in this election, a question every one of us should ask is, who do I know? Who can I trust beyond a shadow of a doubt with Supreme Court appointments? And I give you my word, every justice I put on the court will be a principled constitutionalist who will be faithful to the law and who will not legislate from the bench. And the third and critical issue in this election is security. For 7 years, we've seen a president who abandons and alienates our friends and allies and shows weakness and appeasement to our enemies. You know, if I had come here 3-4 years ago and had suggested to you that the Prime Minister of Israel would come to speak to a joint session of Congress and he would be boycotted by the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and every member of the Congress, that would have been dismissed by our friends in the media as scaremongering. They would have said, that would never happen. Well, let me tell you, Dan and I were both sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives when Prime Minister Netanyahu was there, and Obama wasn't there, and Biden wasn't there, and no member of the cabinet was willing to even sit and listen to the Prime Minister of Israel. This has been the most anti-Israel administration we've ever seen. And if I'm elected president, America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. And over the last 7 years, we've also seen our military undermined. We've seen readiness degraded. We've seen morale of the troops plummeting. And you know, as a nation, we've seen this before. We've seen another left-wing Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, weaken and undermine the military. And then in January 1981, Ronald Reagan came into office. And what did Reagan do? He cut taxes, he pulled back regulations. And small businesses took off, millions of new jobs that generated trillions in new revenue, and he used that revenue to rebuild the military, and we bankrupted the Soviet Union and won the Cold War. I intend to do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terrorism. We're going to repeal Obamacare and pass a flat tax and rein in the regulators and stop amnesty. And the result will be millions and millions of new high-paying jobs, of manufacturing jobs, of wages rising again. That's going to generate trillions of new government revenue, and we will use that revenue to rebuild our military so it remains the mightiest fighting force on the face of the planet. One of the saddest aspects of the last 7 years has been this president sending our fighting men and women into combat with rules of engagement so strict that their arms are tied behind their backs, that they cannot fight, they cannot win, they cannot defend themselves. That is wrong. It is immoral. And mark my words, in January 2017, it will end. To every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine, and for that matter, to every police officer and firefighter and first responder, no longer will you have a president who demonizes and blames you. You will have a commander-in-chief who has your back. So let's talk a little politics. This has been an interesting year. Hadn't been boring. We started out a year ago with 17 candidates, a fantastic, talented, diverse, amazing field of candidates. What a contrast with the Democrats. You know, the Democratic field consists of a wild-eyed socialist with ideas that are dangerous for America and the world, and Bernie Sanders. And at this point, after a year, the primary's done its job. It has narrowed the field. And as we stand here today, there are two and only two candidates that have any plausible path whatsoever to winning the Republican nomination. Me and Donald Trump. And what we are seeing happening all across the country is 65 to 70% of Republicans nationwide recognize that Donald is not the best candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton. That if Donald is our nominee, we lose, and we lose by double digits. And if we're losing by double digits, it means we lose the Senate. It means we could lose the House. It means if Hillary's president, we lose the Supreme Court for a generation. It means our kids are buried in trillions more in debt, and we're trapped in the same economic stagnation we've seen for 7 years. And for that reason, we are seeing Republicans across this country uniting behind our campaign. Of the 17 Republicans who started this campaign, 5 are supporting our campaign now. We've been endorsed by Rick Perry, Lindsey Graham, Jeb Bush, Carly Fiorina, and Governor Scott Walker. Now, when you throw into that mix Mike Lee and Glenn Beck and Mark Levin, you've got the entire spectrum of the Republican Party coming together and uniting behind this campaign. And let me tell you, the state of Indiana is going to play a pivotal role in this election. The entire country, her eyes are on the state of Indiana, the men and women in this room. Heidi and I, we are going to spend a lot of time here in Indiana working to earn your votes, barnstorming the state, holding town halls, holding rallies, asking for your support. And Indiana's voice, Indiana's megaphone to the country, will decide which path this party goes down, which path this country goes down. I hope and believe that the people of Indiana want to get behind a positive, optimistic, forward-looking, conservative campaign with real solutions to bring jobs back to America, to protect our liberties, and to keep us safe. And, you know, I'm reminded, in closing, we think about the Leviathan that is the federal government. Can things change? You know, the media tries to tell us things can never change. We can change if we stand together. I'm reminded of one more quote from the movie Hoosiers. Right before the big game, the players are getting ready to pray. And the following prayer is offered up. And David put his hand in the bag and took out a stone and slung it. And it struck the Philistine on the head, and he fell to the ground. Amen. Let me tell you, the Philistine of the federal government, the Leviathan that has been killing jobs and stripping our liberties, when we the people rise up against it, just as in 1980, so too will 2016 be a victory of the grassroots against Washington, and we will unleash incredible economic growth. It took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And I am convinced the longest-lasting legacy of Barack Obama is going to be a new generation of leaders in the Republican Party who stand and fight for liberty, who stand and fight for the Constitution, and who stand and fight for the Judeo-Christian values that built this great nation. Thank you.